Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox. The jury in Hunter Biden's gun trial has reached a verdict. He's found guilty on all three charges. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards explains what's next. President Biden delivering a speech about gun control just hours after his son is found guilty on those gun charges. How the president reacts to the latest verdict. The U.S. is sending $400 million in aid to displaced Palestinians. Meanwhile, Hamas terrorists have yet to officially respond to a ceasefire proposal. New York City is cracking down on illegal gun trafficking. The latest offender allegedly sold firearms from inside a prison cell. We'll have the latest on that. Federal election officials are growing more and more concerned that AI will impact the November elections. We have an AI expert explain the potential risks. $500,000 goes to the last person standing in a competition of man versus nature. NTD's Daniel Monahan speaks with a contestant who survived the wilderness in the hit show Alone. Just hours after Hunter Biden is found guilty on gun charges, President Biden speaking on gun safety at a previously scheduled event in Washington. Here's a clip of that speech.
Many of you who have lost someone to gun violence, this has been a passion of mine for a long, long time. It's a reason way back, a long time ago, I authored the Violence Against Women Act, which no one thought made any sense at the time. I had a lot of trouble getting people to think we could make a difference. But the fact of the matter is, I remember well when you first started it with me. There's extraordinary courage.
President Biden said earlier today that he would accept the outcome of Hunter's case. The president changed his schedule after his son's conviction and will now return to Wilmington, Delaware after that speech. He also set to leave for Italy on Wednesday morning for the G7 summit. It's unclear if his scheduled departure will be affected. Hunter Biden's jury this morning quickly finding him guilty of all three felony gun charges. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards recaps the case and explains what happens next.
After less than 4 hours of deliberations, a Delaware jury found the president's son, Hunter Biden, guilty of 3 felony gun charges. The charges include 2 counts of making false statements. They relate to his answer of no on a mandatory gun registration form to the question of whether or not he was addicted or taking illegal drugs. The 3rd count is possessing a firearm while addicted to drugs. Hunter had pleaded not guilty to all charges, but the jury decided that he knew he was addicted to crack cocaine when he completed that form, and that he continued to use illegal drugs in the days after the purchase of the gun. The first son faces up to 25 years in prison and up to a $750,000 fine, but he is unlikely to get the maximum sentence as a first-time offender. The judge will make the final decision on whether or not Hunter Biden gets prison time, fines, probation, or some combination. She did not schedule a sentencing hearing after the verdict was read. President Biden said in a statement after the verdict, quote, "Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today." Former President Trump's campaign said in a statement, quote, "This trial has been nothing more than a distraction from the real crimes of the Biden crime family, which has raked in tens of millions of dollars from China, Russia, and Ukraine." Here's what Special Counsel David Weiss said.
No one in this country is above the law. Everyone must be accountable for their actions, even this defendant. However, Hunter Biden should be no more accountable than any other citizen convicted of this same conduct. The prosecution has been and will continue to be committed to this principle.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken continues to push Middle Eastern leaders to pressure Hamas to accept a ceasefire proposal. At the same time, he announces a large amount of humanitarian aid going to help displaced Palestinians. NTD's Jack Bradley joins us from the State Department. Jack, what's the latest on Blinken's visit?
Good afternoon, Steph. Well, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in the Middle East right now, calling on world leaders to put pressure on Hamas to accept a ceasefire proposal that was put forward by President Biden nearly 2 weeks ago, and it would lead to the release of nearly all hostages that are currently being held by Hamas terrorists. Hamas has yet to respond officially to the ceasefire proposal. This is Blinken's 8th visit to the Middle East since the Israel-Hamas war began back in October. And during this recent visit, he spoke to leaders in Israel, the Palestinian Authority, as well as Egypt and Jordan. Take a look.
When I met Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday in Israel, he reaffirmed his support and his commitment to bringing this proposal across the finish line. One and only one thing stands in the way of this deal happening, and that's Hamas. Press them publicly, press them privately. And Hamas should not require much convincing. After all, the proposal is nearly identical to one that Hamas itself proposed on May the 6th.
Now, Blinken also announced the U.S.'s largest contribution to the Palestinian people since the October war began between Israel and Hamas. He announced that the U.S. will be sending $400 million in humanitarian aid. This brings the total of U.S. assistance to the Palestinians since the war began to over $670 million. This will be used to provide the Palestinians with food, water, shelter, health care, and education. And while in Israel, Blinken had met with several of the family members of hostages, reassuring them that they'll be rescued very soon. Take a look.
Blinken came, he's been here multiple times, he shook our hand, he spoke to us, he reassured us that they're doing everything possible. And our message to him was that we have to bring home every single hostage. That this is an issue of all of our family members who are alive and who are not, and we need every single one of them home. And he promised that that's what he's working on in his government and with the Israeli government.
Blinken's visit comes as there's still about 120 hostages, 5 of them Americans, held by Hamas in Gaza. Back to you, Steph.
All right. Thank you so much for keeping us updated on this, Jack. And back home, the U.S. Coast Guard is sending home over 300 migrants trying to enter the country illegally. That's as Canada is allocating money to deal with the influx of people. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the immigration update.
The U.S. Coast Guard returned over 300 migrants to the Bahamas and Haiti in recent days. That's after they tried entering the country legally multiple times. The operation started after a tip from Customs and Border Protection. The Coast Guard issued a message saying, "Don't take to the sea and risk your life just to be sent back. Use the safe, orderly and lawful pathways available." In Canada, the federal government says it will give Quebec $750 million. That's to help pay for a surge in temporary immigrants. The province now has some 560,000 temporary immigrants. The number has almost doubled in 2 years. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says, "I think that we see across the country there are a lot of challenges regarding social services, housing, healthcare, for which immigrants can't receive all the blame." He added that Quebec is aiming to reduce immigration. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
And New York City is cracking down on illegal gun trafficking. The latest accused offender is a 24-year-old who allegedly sold firearms from inside a prison cell. NTD's Fiona G. was at the announcement of the indictment.
Today, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg announced the indictment of Hayden Espinoza, who has been accused of allegedly selling illegal firearms online and in his prison cell.
The indictment today against Hayden Espinoza, who we allege sold and attempted to sell weapons and gun parts to an undercover NYPD officer while he was in federal prison. As a result, he is charged in a New York State Supreme Court indictment.
The investigation against Espinoza began in 2022. Authorities say that he ran a Telegram chat called 3D Amendment, through which he was able to sell weapons parts that could be used to make ghost guns, which are guns without serial numbers that cannot be traced. Many of the buyers in the 3D Amendment chat were racially motivated extremists, authorities say. There was even a photo showing a man wearing a Nazi armband.
We see this sad and tragic combination far too often of the intersection of gun violence and gun trafficking and hate and extremism.
Officials were also able to link weapons used by the shooter in the 2022 Buffalo supermarket shooting to Espinoza's chat. According to authorities, many of the weapons parts that Espinoza sold were 3D printed, which they say is a growing threat in firearms dealing. Espinoza had already been detained and convicted and was serving a prison term in a federal prison in Louisiana, where he continued to sell firearms out of his prison cell, including to an undercover NYPD officer. After his prison term in Louisiana, Espinoza will be extradited back to New York at the end of this month for his hearing. Fiona G., NTD News.
And today in Florida, a federal judge strikes down major parts of a law that banned cross-sex drugs and procedures for children and imposed restrictions on adults. Federal District Court Judge Robert Hinkle had already temporarily blocked the law, and now he's permanently ruled against it. In April last year, Florida lawmakers passed the measure preventing medical professionals from prescribing hormones for anyone under 18. Governor DeSantis signed it into law in May 2023. Medical providers could face criminal liability and professional discipline under it. Judge Hinkle says those provisions and others were unconstitutional. And the Federal Election Commission expects artificial intelligence to threaten the integrity of the elections ahead of November. Agency and government leaders have growing concerns that AI-generated content such as deepfakes could mislead voters. NTD's Andrew Thomas speaks with an artificial intelligence specialist to learn more about the potential risks.
The Federal Election Commission is sounding the alarm on artificial intelligence. Technologist Alexander de Ritter says the threat of AI interfering in our electoral process is multifaceted. He cites AI's ability to copy a candidate's voice.
With just a number of seconds of someone's voice, you can create credible AI clones. And so if you get a phone call from a politician or what sounds like a politician, do not immediately believe it just because it sounds like that politician.
AI is evolving so rapidly that it's starting to learn how users feel, and those feelings can be manipulated.
Artificial intelligence has gotten more emotionally aware. So in the last year, we have seen artificial intelligence that can pick up on a voice emotion in a conversation and adapt its responses based on that. And so that yields for more persuasive, human-like conversations.
Mis and disinformation were a huge concern during the 2020 presidential race. But is seeing really believing anymore?
AI can now generate persuasive video. And it is not perfect. You can definitely still tell that it is AI generated. But it feels like we're just like one innovation away from it crossing the uncanny valley, where it becomes really hard to distinguish.
De Ritter explains that AI also poses a more direct threat to our elections.
You can now have AI look for vulnerabilities in code that previously humans might have not found. So that means AI can more quickly find issues with election systems and basically all the software and hardware that underpins our election system.
AI could also undermine confidence in the electoral process itself.
Even if AI was not used to manipulate hard votes, then it can still be used to undermine faith in the outcome of our elections. And so if a public does not believe the elections were fair, it can also undermine an election in a significant way.
De Ritter notes that the media has historically influenced American voters. He cites a study from Brigham Young University last year that looked at student media consumption.
What can voters do to determine what's true and what's not when they consider voting for the candidate of their choice?
This university did a study where they used AI to analyze media diets, including social media. And it turned out that this kind of diet, media diet we have, is a surprisingly good predictor of election outcomes. So in a way, they say you are what you eat.
A political consultant made news in January after he sent artificial intelligence-generated robocalls mimicking President Joe Biden's voice. He appeared in court last week to face charges of voter suppression and impersonating a candidate. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
When we come back, Europe appears to be shifting to the right, but one political expert doesn't see it having much of an impact. And a new report shows America's small business confidence is up, but inflation is still the biggest challenge. $500,000 goes to the last person standing in a competition of man versus nature. NTD's Daniel Monahan speaks with a contestant in the hit show Alone who survived in the wilderness. When we return.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, ride your bike.
If you're happy and you know it, then your face will surely show it.
If you're happy and you know it, smile big and bright.
Thousands of kids just like me are happy every day.
And it's all because of generous people like you who support Shriners Hospitals for Children every month.
All you have to do is call the number on your screen or go online to loveshriners.org right now with your monthly gift.
Because of people like you, Shriners Hospitals for Children is able to make an everyday miracle happen for kids like me.
If you're happy and you know it, dance around. If you're happy and you know it, play a song.
If you're happy and you know it, and your face will surely show it.
If you're happy and you know it, take a shot.
And when you call or go online right now to donate $19 a month or more, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of all the smiles you're bringing to kids' faces every day.
Will today be the day you send your love to the rescue?
When you call the number on your screen right now and give as little as $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you'll be making a life-changing difference for a child, just like Sarah.
Your monthly gift today could change your life forever.
Because of you.
We are happy and we know it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please call or go online right now to give. If operators are busy, please wait patiently or go to loveshriners.org right away.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel actually an effect, and I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times, and so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it, and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference, because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours, and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
Following Conservatives' strong performance in the European elections, France is now the center of attention in Europe. President Emmanuel Macron's decision to call a snap election has shocked the country. Initial polls indicate that right-leaning parties are likely to win the parliament. NTD's international correspondent David Vives has that story.
The latest results published Tuesday by the European Parliament confirm a rise of right-wing and nationalist parties across Europe. But the existing coalition, consisting of the more moderate European People's Party, the Socialists and Democrats, and Renew Europe Party, retained its majority in the EU Parliament. According to geopolitician Alexandre Delval, the election results amount to little change in the European Parliament.
It's certainly a success for France's far-right party, which is now the leading party in France for the European elections. But the outcome of the EU elections is not a far-right wave either. It's not what's going to enable it to govern either in the European Parliament or in France.
The main takeaway of the elections might be what experts have called a political earthquake in France. following a humiliating defeat against right-wing Marine Le Pen's party. Macron announced a snap election for members of parliament. This has been a shock not only for political groups but also for ordinary French citizens. Protests have erupted in several cities in France following the president's announcement. Delval said he noticed the media demonizing right-wing leadership in biased reports.
So to sum up, what we are seeing in the media is very alarmist. Emmanuel Macron warns of the imminent danger of the return of the right wing, which is depicted as abhorrent, pro-radical and fascist.
The first polls forecast a win for right-wing party in France's parliamentary elections, which will be held on June 30th. A win would offer right-wing party a shot at real political power after years on the sidelines. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
And next, small business confidence is up, and the feds bar 3 more Chinese companies accused of being involved with forced labor. Here's NTD's Don Ma with today's Business Matters.
Thank you very much, Steph. So let me talk to you about U.S. small businesses. Their confidence in hiring plans increased in May to their highest level of this year. And it is the second consecutive month that it has risen after slumping in March to the lowest level since December 2012. Now, despite the gain, it was still the 29th straight month that the index was below the 50-year average. This is according to the National Federation of Independent Business. And 22% of owners reported that inflation was their single most important problem in operating their business. And the share of businesses planning price hikes increased 2 points to 28%. Meanwhile, the net percentage of owners raising average selling prices was 25%, also unchanged from April. Now, there were also some indications that small business owners may be beginning to pull back on raising wages. A net 37% of owners reported increasing compensation, and 18% plan to boost compensation over the next 3 months. Meanwhile, the U.S. has added 3 more companies to a list that bars imports from firms allegedly involved with Uyghur forced labor in China. And this is according to a U.S. government notice posted online on Tuesday. So the latest targets include shoe manufacturer Dongguan Oasis Shoes and electrolytic aluminum maker Xinjiang Shenhua Coal and electricity and food processor Shandong Meijia Group. Now, scores of companies have been added to the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act entity list, which, by the way, restricts the import of goods tied to what the U.S. government has characterized as an ongoing genocide of minorities in China's western Xinjiang region. All right, Steph, that's all from me. Back to you.
Alone in the wilderness with no food or water, nothing to keep you alive but your own wits, while large predators like hungry bears and wolves see you as part of the food chain. NTD's Daniel Monahan speaks with Jody Rose, who survived in Reindeer Lake, northern Saskatchewan, to try to win $500,000 in prize money as part of the History Channel's hit show, Alone.
Jody Rose says she learned her bushcraft skills from her homesteading parents. The self-reliant pair built everything from scratch, including a 2-room cabin after they got married.
If I need something, I can build it and make it. I carved an entire fishing pole by hand with just my pocket knife, or it was actually my multi-tool, but and it has a working reel and everything.
Rose says she didn't eat animals during her time on Alone, except for the minnows in the lake in her water. She wasn't ready to sacrifice them until it was necessary.
But I mostly ate the cranberries, and I had blueberries. I had the reindeer moss. I started getting leg cramps within a week there, so I started eating the birch bark, the inside of the birch bark, to get magnesium and potassium. I ate mushrooms.
Rose says the most important thing for her was building a high-quality shelter.
I don't like being cold, for one thing, but it gets it down to -40s, -60s up there, and I live in that kind of weather year-round. And I've been in hunting camp when it drops down to -20 degrees, and it's miserable and it's freezing.
Rose succeeded in making an amazing cabin, but on day 17, something happened.
I was inside of my cabin, and I was cooking some food, and I heard my mom call out to me. She said, Jody, I need you. And it was weird because obviously my mom wasn't there. And I was like,
A past experience taught Rose to listen to her intuitive feelings. It was when her baby Isaac was just 18 months old and she was irrigating in her backyard.
it's just all of a sudden standing there and I heard, where's Isaac? And there was nobody else there except for me and Isaac and my other kids. And they were little. And it was a man's voice. And I heard this voice said, where's Isaac? And within that same second that I heard that voice, I knew exactly where he was at, and I almost flew to the pond. And once I got there, he was under the water, and I don't know how long he'd been under there, but he was kicking and wiggling around. And if I would have been any later, if I would have questioned that voice, my baby would have died.
She wrestled with leaving for a few days, but on day 22, she couldn't put it off any longer and had to tap out.
It turns out that my father was septic and my mom didn't know it. And she told me that my dad wasn't feeling well. And I said, you need to get him to the emergency room.
Rose says if she hadn't tapped out when she did, she very well could have lost both of her parents. As for the pull of the great outdoors, the alone survivor says being in touch with nature brings people back to their true origin.
But for me, it's both. It's nature and God. And we can find God in his creations, and trees and animals and nature is one of the best ways to find it. And if we can connect to that, then we find out who we really are and what we're capable of.
A new season of Alone premieres Thursday, June 13th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, only on the History Channel. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Incredible. Next up, breaking news. A shooting in Atlanta. So far, police say 4 people have been shot at a mall in downtown Atlanta. The building is still under lockdown and it is an active scene. We'll have more on this in NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox.